Hey guys, how you doing? Steph here. So I retired, semi-retired at 30, 32. It's been so long, I forget exactly when. So in this video, I'm going to tell you what I did, what the strategies were, what the thinking was, and you could put this to use as well, because it took me years to figure out how to do it. And once I figured out how to do it, then I was able to get there within about 4 years. So I think you could too, if you're 50, 60 even. So if you're like 40, 50, 60, and you haven't saved for retirement, this will be extremely useful for you. In fact, within a year, you can find yourself on the right path. It may not be the easiest first year, depending, but it does work. So let me just get into some of the high-level bullet points. So number one, you have to have financial discipline. What does that mean? There's a lot of things. Number one, you have to not spend more than you make. You have to start spending less than you make. You have to start monitoring your budget. You have to start budgeting, right? You have to start getting rid of stupid expenses. You will find probably that you can save a lot of money. So when I first figured this out at around 25, 26, I started looking at my expenses and I saw, this is back in 1990s money, I saw that I was spending about $700 a month more on stuff that I didn't really need. It didn't have much of an impact. And a part of that was $200, I think $300 of it was credit card interest expense. I was literally giving the bank $2,500 a year approximately, $2,500 a year just in interest, just because I was impatient in my purchasing habits. So I would buy something right away as opposed to waiting a couple of months to save up and buy it and not have to pay the interest, which is, that's a smart way of doing it. So anyway, by going over my expenses, I quickly saw that I could save, $700 a month. That's about $8,400 a year in 1990s money. I guess today it would be like $12,000, $13,000 a year savings on stuff I didn't really need. That's the key thing. I didn't really need. Now you may be saying to yourself, well, that's not much. Well, think about it. Over 10 years, right? If you're saving $8,400 a year, over 10 years, that's $8,500 just about, right? Over 10 years, right? So it's $84,000, over 10 years. Over 20 years, that's $168,000. That's not including return on investment and all kinds of other things, right? So just by doing that over 20 years, you're probably costing yourself $250,000, right? Think about $250,000 extra dollars over 20 years. Just by managing my expenses. So yeah, the first thing you got to do is you got to get some financial discipline. You got to start looking at where you're spending your money, start tracking your expenses and look for ways to save money. It adds up, $10 here, $20 here, $50 here. Next thing you know, so the next thing you have to do, no matter what your age, is you got to keep upping your skills, keep improving your own skill set. That's the best investment you can make is in yourself. I have been a lifelong autodidact, which means I continuously learn new things because it's interesting to me. And I learn new things that are valuable. And so I started off as an entrepreneur at 18 years old. I actually started my first company at 17. Everything bootstrapped, by the way. Don't come from money. And then I would learn how to do import-export. I would learn the water purification business and so on and so forth. Then I learned technology. I learned how to write code, how to build websites. Then I learned about online marketing, website optimization, e-marketing. Then I get, later on, I'm doing the video work and photography, understanding that whole game, how to write well, et cetera, and so forth, how to communicate well. As you increase your skills, you will become more valuable and you will make more money for your time. So even though I pretty much retired, I say pretty much because for the first 10 years, when I kind of hit that level of retirement, and I'll tell you what that is in a second, I would work maybe an hour a week just to maintain things. So what did I do? I cut down all my expenses. I was kept skilling up. I still skill up to this day because it's good for your brain, by the way, health-wise. I started saving and investing. So when I decided to hang up my keyboard, if you will, and stop taking on contracts, I was at the point where I had much more money saved up than any of my contemporaries, or was years ahead of them. And I was still saving via passive income streams I was still saving much more than I needed to live on. In some years, I would save 80% of my income. Typical would be like 50%, but some years 80%. So it just kept building quite quickly. That was and after about 10 years of doing that, I got bored, started a new business, which was the studio web. I bootstrapped that thing. Anyway, the point being is you hit retirement when you're in a position where you have at least 10 years worth of savings, passive income or semi-passive income, where you're earning a lot more than you need to live on so you can keep on saving. So my trajectory was just very, 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 very positive. So that brings me to my next tip. You want to find ways where you can make money, where you're making money doing something you like. So one of the things you should be doing besides getting financially disciplined by upping your skills, in that process, you try to figure out what you like to do. How do you like to spend your days? One of the things I talked about in a detailed video was think about when you get up in the morning, do you want to go to work? Do you want to put on a suit? Or do you want to are you a people person? Or do you like working on projects in isolation? Think about, right down to the detail, how you like to spend your days. This is going to have a huge impact on you trying to figure out what type of activity you enjoy, what is fun for you, what activity is like it's not work for you. And when you can find yourself doing that for a living, then you're not working anymore. You're just having fun. So you got to find a way. Number 3, you got to find a way to find activities rather that make you money and are fun for you. Next tip, you want to be consistent. You have to be consistent. I shouldn't have to say this, but consistency is a skill, by the way. It's a skill. People give up too easily. People are not consistent, whether it be in investing, whether it be in upping skills, whether it be in weight loss, whatever it is, exercise. Consistency is key. So you got to be consistent in implementing these things. The financial discipline, upping your skills, and the other things I'm going to talk about, these are all works in progress. You got to keep working towards it. Next tip, number 5, you want to become Buddhist vis-a-vis possessions and lifestyle. Now, there's an old expression, it's the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Yeah. And what that means is that if you've never owned a fancy German sports car, they're very attractive to you until you've owned them for a while. Don't get me wrong. You've had them for several years, the first several years, fun. But after a while, they start becoming a headache because they break a lot. You got to bring them to the garage all the time. Taking them to the garage is a pain in the ass. So it's just like, they become problematic. And same thing with a big house. Big houses, expensive properties to maintain, having all that responsibility is not fun. It becomes unfun after a while. I own where I live, but some ways I miss the rental because with the rental, I didn't care. I had no responsibility for the property. I just had to pay my monthly expense. That's it. I didn't care about repairs. I didn't care about hurricanes. I didn't care about insurance. Nothing. It was total freedom. You want to become a Buddhist with regards to your lifestyle and your possessions. So, for example, I talk about designer furniture. So I got some designer furniture here. And in some ways, I regret some of the pieces. Some of the pieces have gone up in value quite a bit. So the Eames pieces. So I could sell them for double what I paid for because of the nature of those pieces. But those are exceptional. Most high-end furniture that you buy will retain some value, but most, at best, you're going to get 50% of your money back, which is still a lot better than IKEA pieces. But here's the thing. If you spend $15,000 on a couch, it's a bit of, it's like, I spent $15,000 on an couch. You don't want to mess around with the couch, right? Whereas if you buy a couch for $2,000-3,000, you don't care, right? You just throw it out. You don't care. If you get bored of the couch, if you only spent $1,000 or $2,000, you don't care. You spend $1,000 to sell it to somebody for $100 and you take it away. It's not a big deal. But when you have very, very expensive things, they become liabilities because they're expensive things. But if they're cheap things, they're not so the liability is very, very minimal because replacement cost is nothing. Same thing with fancy trips. I've been on the fanciest trips, staying in the fanciest places, and after a while it gets kind of old. You realize it's the value of these type of vacations they're overstated. Next tip, investing. You have to invest. Now, investing should be a passive activity. Should be a passive activity. Most people who try to actively trade and buy and sell and time market, 90% of these people lose money. And it's a lot of work. Trust me, I've tried it. I made money doing that. Between 2007 and 2011, I was actively buying and selling and doing all kinds of stuff, and I made money. But I went back after I got tired of it. I went back and looked at all my purchases, all my sales, and I just did the calculation. If I had just bought and held everything I bought and held even all the losers, basically the stocks that went to nothing or lost a lot of money, I'd still be way ahead if I just bought and hold. And it's no work. So how do you invest? So the most successful investment strategies is number one, dollar cost averaging. That means you're putting in money on a regular basis periodically. So it could be $2,000 a month, $1,000 a month, whatever it is. And you don't try to time the market. It's time in the market, meaning the longer you have your money in the market, the more successful you're going to be. There was a study put out by the Vanguard founder years ago, and he found that if somebody took all their money and put it in the market on Monday, and then on Tuesday, the market would crash. 10 years, and they did nothing more, just left it there. 10 years later, that person would be way ahead of the person who never put their money in the market. So you want to put your money in the market. So dollar cost averaging is the safest way, just on a regular basis, keep putting more, keep putting more, keep putting more. The key is to get to about 100 to 200,000 in there. The old number was 100,000. Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, used to say you want to get to that key 100,000. It's probably more like 200,000 these days. Why is it the case? Because on average, when you're invested in the market, in the broader market, like S&Ps through ETFs and so on, very diversified, so you're safe. No work, it's no work, no risk, no psychological impact, or very little anyway. Once you have 100,000 in there, it's making you 7 to 12% a year. So you have 100,000, it's making you $7,000 to $12,000 a year. If you got 200,000, you're making $14,000 to $24,000 a year. You see how having that money in the market starts to really contribute to your wealth, right? So the key is to scrimp and save and to work hard and overtime to get that first 100,000 to 200,000 saved up. It may seem daunting, but if you follow the previous steps where you become financially responsible, you keep leveling up your skills, you find something that you like, you live below your means. You don't want to get into that lifestyle inflation problem. That's what happened. I just learned that instinctively. When I could afford Porsches and 911s and all kinds of expensive cars and expensive homes and vacations, I just didn't do it. I lived pretty frugally because I discovered that I was pretty happy with the low-key lifestyle. And I just continued that. That's why I was able to basically hit retirement quite young, at 30 years old, 30, 32, something like that. At the end of the day, all this comes down to is lizard brain, emotional, psychological impulse control. That's what it all comes down to. Unfortunately, for most of us, we learn these lessons of not getting involved in lifestyle inflation, not being concerned about what your neighbors are doing. Unfortunately, most people don't learn that until they're much older. The younger you are that you learn these lessons, where the big house it's not that important. You only need it if you have lots of kids. The super beautiful vacations in Hawaii or Fiji, etc., they're nice once in a while. May do one once in a while, but trust me, having a lot of money in the bank that's earning you a lot of cash is much more enjoyable than some expensive trip you took 10, 15 years ago. That being said, you don't want to be a workaholic. I became a workaholic when I was quite young, which is that has its own problems. You want to find a nice balance. You want to find a nice balance between saving and investing, upskilling, earning money, versus living the extravagant life. I'm at a point now where I actually downsized. I live in a luxury place, but I downsized my place by quite a bit because I noticed that in my old place, half of the space, I used to call it my museum. because I had all this furniture and I would never go there, and the furniture would be in there and dust would collect on the furniture. So I had the other half of my place I just barely used. And I realized I was paying this money for all this square footage that I never used. So when I bought this place here, I downsized. It's a nice place, but I downsized quite a bit. It's about 50% smaller. And I'm very comfortable, very comfortable. I like the freedom, the psychological freedom of having a place where I don't have to worry about cost. I don't have to worry about if all hell broke loose, I can still live here with minimal amount of money. And that to me is much more valuable than having an extra 1,000 square foot. There you go. I just laid out the 6 tips that will help you reach early retirement. It can be done within 4 years. That's what I did once I figured it out, but it requires a little bit of discipline. This is just an overview, of course. If you want more, let me know. Comment below if you like this type of content. If you like my long hair, give me a thumbs up. If you don't like my long hair, give me two thumbs down. If you have any questions or comments about what I just discussed in this video, comment below. And that's about it. Cheers.